And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And jump right into this. So just to give a little bit of background, and again, just as I go through this, okay, and thank you, Chris, I got your email too. So just as I go through this, since there's no better way, just go ahead and email me if you have any questions or technical difficulties or anything like that, and I'll have this open here to respond. But basically, just to give a bit of background, the thing that's really exciting about mobile apps right now is there have kind of been these different waves of technology. So when the computer first came out, it opened up all these opportunities for these different companies to take over different parts of the market. So, you know, Microsoft really dominated the operating system, and then you had companies like Quicken, Intuit, you know, take over like the tax preparing software industry, and all these different people took over different spaces. And then when the web came along and the internet, then you had a whole new playing field, and Amazon took over, and Facebook, and all these different companies took over the different spaces there. And now with mobile apps, it's opened up another brand new field of opportunities for different people to create very successful apps. And in fact, there was the guy who made What's Up, which sold to Facebook for, I believe it was $15 billion, was on food stamps and welfare just before he developed that. So it just, and another story that someone asked that I share on the call today was there was a guy who, after only, it was like 5 months of coding using the stuff that I'm going to show today, had one of the top, Yahoo puts out a list of the top, I believe, 10 or 50 websites, and his made the list. So it's one of those things that there's a lot of opportunity, and it's quite easy to get into even after just a little bit of experience. So the goal of this course is that over the series of 1-hour sessions, I'll be showing you guys and doing this as kind of a code-along thing where I'll be showing easy ways of coding stuff that you guys will be able to follow along with. And by the end of it, you'll have been able to make your own app, your own database, your own APIs that interface between the app and the database. And even if you guys don't know what those terms mean, I'll explain them. I'm not going to assume that anybody knows anything. If I start using terms that don't make sense, just feel free to stop me, and I'll be happy to explain them. And then ultimately compile this app and upload it to the Android App Store. So by the end of this, the goal is that all of you will have your own published apps. And so not only is it great from the standpoint of, if you want to make your own business, it's really great, but even LinkedIn recently they released the top skills that get people recruited, and mobile app development was number 2. So without further information, I'll just go ahead and get started. So there are basically 3 different types of mobile app development, and the main one that I thought was the only way when I started, and is the way that is the most commonly known way, is the native app development approach. And the way this works is, okay, so I'm just getting a couple, oh boy. So yeah, I'm getting a bunch of messages that it's slow for some of you and stuff. Hopefully Google gets this worked out. But in any event, I'm just going to keep going here. Hopefully it speeds up for some of you. But basically, so the native app approach is where, if you're making an Android app, you're going to learn Java and the Android SDK, and you're going to download Eclipse, and you're going to make an app there. And then if you want to make it for iOS, you're going to get a Mac, and you're going to download Xcode, and you're going to learn Objective-C, and you're going to make an app for that. And then the same, different thing for Windows, different thing for BlackBerry. And then if you want to make a fix, you're going to have to go to both different places to make that fix. Add a new feature, you're going to have to code it twice. And so as a result, it's a lot of work if you want to support more than one platform. And in my experience, Android and iOS at least are almost like 50-50. So if you do an app for just one of them, you're kind of leaving out about half of the potential people who could be using it. Okay, so actually, so one person, by the way, if you're having streaming problems, mentioned that somehow he's able to watch on YouTube. So I guess if you guys look up my YouTube channel, which is just David Dawdlin, you may be able to get it there. Anyway, I got another comment that someone said if you refresh the page, it eventually catches up. So that's another thing. Hopefully we get this all figured out. But anyway, so given all those problems with native app development, some people said, well, what if we just made websites that looked like apps? And the benefit to that is that all the phones are able to load websites, and they all sort of run them the same way. So that way you're able to just code it once, and it works on everything. The problem to that, and so actually Facebook tried to do this. Their strategy was for their mobile version of Facebook, they were going to just have, they were just going to really focus on a web. Hang on here. Let me see. Are people able to chat over here? Is that what's? Let me just double check this. All right. Well, we'll figure this out later. So the problem with that, though, and they quickly discovered this, was that with just a website, it was not able to, whenever someone would load a page, it would have to download all of that information from the website. And so as a result, it would be slower. Also, obviously, you always had to have internet to get on. That you couldn't make an offline app. And websites in the browsers, for security reasons, limit what websites can access on your device. So if you're doing an app as just a mobile website, you couldn't necessarily have access to things like the accelerometer, the compass, local storage, stuff like that. And so then finally the third approach came up, which is someone said, well, why can't we just have the best of both worlds? Why can't we make an app like a website, but then actually have it run as a native app? And that turned out to be a really great approach. And so when I started at AT&T last year as on a mobile app development team, one of the first things that my boss asked me to do was to research these three methods and basically come up with a comparison of the pros and cons to each of them. And if you look at the first row, so these are the things that I thought were really important that made a difference between which platform to choose. And the first row is, okay, if you do it with one of those approaches, could you install the app on an app store? And that's very significant, because if you don't have access to the app store, if you're just doing it as a website, it's equivalent to inventing a product, opening up your garage door, and saying, hey everybody, putting out a sign in front of your house saying, hey, come buy my wonderful product. And the problem is that nobody knows you're there. You start a website and absolutely nobody knows that you exist. And the only way they find out that you exist is basically by advertising. And then there's some funny things that you can do to try to get up in the search results, but it's all funny different things that you have to do to get up there. Whereas with the App Store, it's like, suppose you made a new sports product and you put it in the sports section of Walmart, and now people who are looking for your type of product, or maybe are just kind of interested in sports and they're browsing, find your product and say, oh, hey, what a great product, let me get it. And so with native, you can put your app in the App Store. With web, you can't, but with hybrid, you also can put it in the App Store. Also, offline usage. If you make the app with one of these three approaches, are you able to run it offline? And that's also really significant, especially if you want to have an app that runs on tablets, or people go through dead zones or have spotty internet. It's just really nice if your app doesn't need to be online to give people the ability to just use it. And so again, native, you can use it offline. Web, you can't. And again, hybrid is the same as native in that respect. As far as hardware goes, native has unlimited access to all the different types of hardware that's available on the phone. As I mentioned before, web is limited, but hybrid also, like native, has access to all of the same hardware that's all the hardware that's on the phone, like the compass and the accelerometer and all those different sensors that you have in your phone that can make your app more interesting. So up to this point, you can see that native and hybrid are exactly the same, and web is worse than every one of them. Now this fourth row, performance, this was the thing that I had initially basically made me not want to do hybrid. Is that I heard that, well, okay, yes, it has all these good things about it, but it's not as fast as a native app. This is quickly changing, though. From the iPhone 5 and up, my experience has been that the hybrid apps are at least as fast as native, and also I just recently got the new Amazon Fire Phone, which is Android, and likewise it was native performance. So some of the other Android devices out there, it's not quite as good performance as native, but I found it to be acceptable, and given the trend, it looks like quickly that difference will be erased. But however, web is a significantly worse experience because, again, all of the, hang on, let me just double check here to make sure, just double check that I'm not getting any questions here. And again, okay, great. So a couple people saying they're back and it's working, so glad to hear that. Perfect. So with web, you have every time you're loading an image or a page or anything, you're downloading it off the internet. So it's not great performance. So now though, these last rows, this is where hybrid really outshines native, and this is the reason that I've chosen to go with hybrid both at work and with my own company, Scoutlet, which I'll get into in a minute. So, like I mentioned before, with native, if you write an app, you take all sorts of time, probably at least a year for a decent-sized app to program, and now you start getting questions from people. Hey, I have an iPhone. Why can't I download your app? And you're like, oh, all these people, want to download my app, and I did it for Android, but they have iPhones. And so then you go and you say, all right, now I'm going to go learn this whole other language and download all this other software and spend a whole another year developing it. And by the time you're done with that, it turns out that people are asking for some fix on the app or some addition. And now every single time you make any change, you're doing double work basically. And then if you want to support Windows, triple work, and BlackBerry, quadruple work. So this is, but on the other hand, with a hybrid app, you have the same code for all of your different platforms. So I've got the same code for Android, the same code for iPhone, same code for Windows. And when I want to make a change, I just make it in one place, and then I compile, and then I basically use this program, which I'll get into in a minute, called PhoneGap, to just then build that for all the different app stores. Another thing here, and I break it out separately, is effort. And the reason I put that separate from the cross-platform issue is that the languages that you have to learn for native development are quite a bit more difficult than the languages you have to learn for hybrid development. So, for example, if you're going to make an iPhone app, you have to learn this weird specialized language that Apple made up called Objective-C, whereas with a hybrid app, you're using the same languages people have been using to make websites for a long time, and they're some of the easiest languages to learn, and they are also very, very well supported. So whenever you have a problem, if you Google it, there's a site called Stack Overflow, which will frequently come up. Almost every problem you could have possibly had with a web language has been encountered by somebody else before and answered. So for that reason, it's a lot less effort to develop an app with a hybrid approach than a native approach. And then finally, for cost, I mean, if you are a Windows user, a nice benefit to hybrid is that you don't have to buy a Mac to develop for hybrid. You can actually develop for it just with your regular Windows computer, and we'll get into that later. So the example of this is a company that I co-founded. Let's see. So this is 2014, so almost 2 years ago, called Scoutlet. And basically, just to give a little bit of background, the idea behind it was in college and professional teams, they know all of their stats. All of their stats are online, easily available. Anybody can find them out. But for high school and younger teams, nobody knows their stats. Basically, what happens right now is that you've got players shooting baskets and fouls and all these different stats happening, and a scorekeeper is recording on a piece of paper. And after the game, it gets filed away in a filing cabinet, and nobody sees it again. So our thought was, well, if we could make an app that is at least as easy to use as paper and provides the same information, we could replace the paper system with our app and then upload all that information to the cloud. And here you can see how it does it. Basically, someone simply taps on a player, they tap what stat that player did, and then they go right back to the player list. So very simple. And then after the game, we upload all that information into the internet, and now parents, players, fans, coaches, scorekeepers can all get on from any device and view those stats, as well as graphs and analytics and all sorts of stuff we can do automatically now that all the stats are digital. So anyway, the reason I bring this up is, so initially, this screen you saw back here was our initial app that we did as a native app. I learned the Android SDK, and this other developer and I worked on this, it took us about, let's see, so we started really in February, and we had 4 guys working on it for a while, and then 2 of us over the summer, and we finished in September. And so after we got this out, then we were saying, all right, now we want to expand to iPhone, and so we started, just because that was the way I thought things were done, doing the Objective-C and for iPhone. And it quickly became apparent this is not a good idea. So we actually decided to scratch the entire app that we did and recode it from the ground up using a hybrid approach. And this is the result you can see here. And a couple benefits. So first off, you can see we've got it for Android over on the left, iPhone in the middle. It also works on the iPad, iPad mini, Kindle, Android, all the different Android tablets. And another thing too that you'll see is that on the phone here, we have only 2 columns. We have 1 column for fouls and 1 column for points. But on the tablet, where there's a whole bunch more space, we automatically expand to show all these other stats that they're recording. And that's a unique thing that you can do with hybrid app development and mobile web development called responsive design. And what I'm going to do to demonstrate it is, hang on here, I'm just going to pull up a website, a mobile app that I developed at AT&T that has an example of this. So just pull this up. So I can actually pull this up in a web browser because this is just like a mobile website. So if let me just minimize this. So if I reduce this browser down to like the size of a phone, you can see that it looks like an app. You've got the footer here and the header and the little icons, but then even amongst different phones, some are slightly wider, slightly taller, different variations of size. So you can see if I drag this out a little bit wider, the footer, it stays the full width. The icons inside of them stay centered. This button stays to the left, that button stays to the right. And if I drag it even a little bit wider, you'll see that this icon pops up to fill the empty space in the top row. So these are all small adjustments that you can do using responsive design. And you do them with simple things like, this footer down here, you set it to 100% width. You set this button size to be 25% of the footer, however wide it happens to be. And you say, well, this icon here of the house should always stay in the middle of that section. And different small things like that you can use to adjust nicely to the different sizes. But then if you get a lot bigger, actually let me just scroll down a bit so you can see this. So down here you can see, for example, we've just got icons for my favorites. But if I go a lot bigger, now might be like a small tablet. We change the view of these things to not just be icons with titles, but also to show their descriptions. So this is sort of the bigger piece of responsive design, which is where you can set conditional styling rules. So you can say, okay, for devices under this screen width, display these elements this way. For devices with screens greater than this width, display them this way. And actually, let me see if I can pull up a good example here. So, for example, one thing that we like to do in my group is we will do so. For example, on a phone, I only have space for this one screen. So, for example, if I click on this course, I go from the course list screen to the course details screen. But if I'm on a tablet, rather than stretching all this stuff out, we could just stretch it all out, but instead on a tablet, what we do is we say, oh, now you have room for 2 columns. So now when you click on a course on the left, we just pull it up on the right, so you don't have to change screens. So then if I want to switch to this course, I just click right over there, and I've got that course, and I don't have to switch screens. So that's one example of how you can use responsive design to make your app look good on a wide variety of devices and basically make the best use that you can of whatever screen size they happen to be on. So this way you don't have to make separate views for the different size devices. So with that, I'm just going to stop and just check my check the email here to see if anybody has any more questions at this point. Okay, I can see some more people say they can hear it now. All right, perfect. Just see if anybody else has any questions. Okay, sounds good. So moving on, the way now that you can actually get into it is pretty simple. So the first step is to learn how to make websites. And the good thing about this is that it's actually one of the easiest types of coding to learn. And there's a very good site called codecademy.com that has free, very well-developed lessons to learn the languages that you need. So what I'm going to do here is just go ahead and pull up the site. And when you go there, you'll just go ahead and sign up for it. Or in my case, I already have an account, so I'll just log in. And once you get into the site, the thing that you should do is scroll down all the way down to where it says language skills. And this right here, HTML and CSS and JavaScript, those are the 3 main languages that you use to write websites. And just one thing that I'll mention that one of the things that really got me excited about programming is when I was about 12. My dad got me and some of my younger brothers together and was showing us Perl at that time on our Windows 95 computer. And the way he described it was, he says, well, with programming, you can tell the computer what to do, and it will do exactly what you tell it. And then, he showed us a little program. You say, print hello world, hit enter, and sure enough, the computer did exactly what we told it to do. And then, we could make the computer, talk politely to us. We could, have it respond however we wanted. And it's just a really neat thing where, just like we use different languages to talk to each other, if you know the computer's language, or in this case, the phone's language, you can tell it what to do, and it will do exactly what you tell it to. Not necessarily what you want it to, but it will do what you tell it to. So the thing that I recommend is to go through, start with their HTML and CSS lessons. And what you'll find is, so you'll click on one of their lessons, and you can see, so this actually has some of my previous text in it. And they'll give you a little lesson, like a few paragraphs, and then they'll give you some instructions. They'll say, okay, we've got this file, change the text on, between those two paragraphs. So I'll say hybrid app development, and as soon as I type that in, over on the right, it will change. And so then once you've done what they asked you to do, you can save and submit, and they'll tell you whether you got it right or if you had some mistake. So for example, if I had a typo here, and I did save and submit code, well, I guess they weren't looking for that. They were looking for whether or not I put that in. They assumed they had their code right. So anyway, start next lesson, and then they talk to you a bit about this doc type thing, and then they say, okay, go ahead and put 3 lines above this and all this stuff. So they basically give you these lessons that you walk through and explain how to code with these 2 languages. And basically, HTML and CSS are the languages that you'll use to make the way the website looks, and then the JavaScript that you saw, oh, hang on, let me just go back to that. The JavaScript is what makes it work. So like the way you saw how I hovered over this and it turned green, that's JavaScript. Or the way you can see that it shows how much, what percentage of the courses that I took, that's JavaScript. And so HTML and CSS are kind of like the visual components, and JavaScript is the stuff that can change them and manipulate them to make it actually work and be customized. And then the third thing here, jQuery, is a good thing to go through because it is just a type of JavaScript, but it provides a lot of extra functionality more easily and simply, and we will be using that for the next piece, which I'll show you. So what I recommend is that over the course of the next week, week and a half, go through these lessons and really learn the HTML and the CSS, the JavaScript. If you click on this, they estimate it's only going to take like about 7 hours of time to go through the HTML and CSS. So if you do an hour a day, it's like by next Monday you'll have gone through all of their lesson on HTML and CSS. But then what we'll do is starting Wednesday and then continuing next week, I'll be walking through actual sample projects using these languages, and I'll explain it as I go along. But just that explanation, you obviously won't be able to cover everything. So I recommend going through those courses for your own development going forward. So now going back to the list. So then the next thing is, okay, so now you know how to make a mobile website, but then the next piece is, okay, how to make a website, and then the next piece is, okay, how do I now make my website look like an app, like the one I showed you that I made at AT&T. And this website here, jQuery Mobile, and by the way, I'll send out this deck after the presentation so you'll have this for reference. This website here, jQueryMobile.com, that is exactly what they enable you to do. So if I go there, oops, their site is a little bit busier and more confusing. The place that you should go to start with to really learn it is if you go to their demos, and then you just go to their latest stable version. And then in here, they basically provide all these different mobile components that you can use to make your website look and work like an app. And it simply uses those same languages that you would have learned on Codecademy. So the HTML and CSS, the JavaScript, and the jQuery. So as you can see, jQuery Mobile, this is made by the same people who make jQuery. So for example, one of the things that they do is, instead of just a link, like a hyperlink that we're used to clicking on a computer, on a phone, as you may have found if you've tried to use websites in your mobile browser that aren't designed to work on a mobile device, it's very difficult. You've got fat finger syndrome to click on, those small URLs. So they provide a way that you can turn, instead of just having a URL, you can actually turn it into a nice big fat button that somebody can click on. And then they have all sorts of different things where you can add icons to them, or have it just be an icon, or have it be smaller, or all these different customization options that you can put on them. They also have things like sliders. So instead of having someone type in a number, you might just have a nice little slider that they can drag with their finger, since typing is one of the worst things that you can do on a phone. They have all sorts of different things. Similarly, if you're choosing an option, they have these nice little touch-friendly flip switches, checkboxes. They turn into buttons. Same thing with radio buttons and big chunky select menus and all these different things. Even and they list them all over here on the left. So for example, I want to have some I need a field where someone picks a date. Click over here on the date picker, and they have this little pop-up date picker, such that if someone taps in that field, it pops up a nice little calendar that's touch-friendly, and they can select a date that way versus typing it in. And so basically, they provide all of these different HTML and JavaScript-based plugins. So the code for that calendar, this is all the code there is to make that calendar. And all of this is just regular stuff that you'll learn in the HTML piece, except for this data role equals date. That's the only thing that's specific to them. So that's just to give you a feel for how easy they make it to go from the stuff you're going to learn on Codecademy to make a website, to then turn that into a website that looks and works like an app. It's really nice, especially for those who, for those of us who aren't, good, strong at design. That's not our strong suit. So now, we know how to make a website. We know how to make our website look and work like an app. But now, how do we actually make it an app to avoid all the problems that there were with the mobile web approach? The final piece to do that is, as I mentioned before, something called PhoneGap. And what PhoneGap does, and I can just pull up their website here. What they basically do, and you can see here, is here you've got this is your JavaScript, your CSS, your HTML, and what they do is they basically put it in a box, and they can put it in an Android box, an iPhone box, or a Windows box, and basically turn it into an actual file that you can then upload to those different app stores to just like any other app. And for those who are more technical and are interested in the technical details of how they do it, basically what happens is that they create a native app with just one view, which is a web view, and then all of your website files are just stored locally on the device, and it basically runs your website within that web view. But now, since all your files are locally on the device, you don't have the problem of downloading all those from the internet. And the other thing, too, is that now, because it's running within a web view, they are able to have access to all of those sensors and things on the phone, which the website would not be allowed access to. So that's the one piece they do. But then the way they make all those hardware things available to your website is really neat. if you go up to their developer tab, and I'll just go ahead and click on their docs link, and then scroll all the way to the bottom over here under their API reference, and I click on their plugin APIs. They have a list of all of these different things that you can access on the phone. So you can access its battery status, the camera, their contacts, the accelerometer, the compass, all these things. And just to give you an example of how it works, basically they worry about all of the specialized things that you have to do on the phone. How is the specialized way I have to, in this case, geolocation. This is how you get the GPS coordinates of the phone. Android has all of its special ways to get that, and iPhone has all of its different special ways to get that. So basically, they wrote all the specialized code for each of the different platforms, and then they provided just a very simple way that you can access that from within your web code, your JavaScript code. So if you look down here at this line that I'm highlighting, this is all the code it takes to get the GPS location of the phone. So all you do is you call this navigator.geolocation.getCurrentPosition, and then here you say, okay, if you successfully get the phone's position, go to this place in the code, and if you fail, go to this other place in the code. And for the on error, it's called a function, and I'll describe later. Basically, functions are like sections of code that do different things, and you can pass them. These are called parameters. Basically, you pass them some data that they can use within them. So if there's an error, it'll go here, and then in this case, this just puts up a pop-up with whatever the error was. Or if it was successful, it goes up here. And this function now has a variable, just like basically a variable is a word. The best way to think of it is just like a word that represents different numbers or text or different data. So in this case, this position variable, it stores the latitude of the phone, the longitude, the altitude, how accurate those readings are, how fast it's going, in what direction, and when this reading was taken. So now, just with that one line of code, we know, whether we compile this, whether we build this for iPhone or for Android or for Windows, we know all this information about the phone, and we don't have to write different code for the different types of phones. So it works very nicely and saves a lot of time. So that's basically it. Those 3 steps. Once you've done those 3 steps, you'll now have everything that you need to make your own app. And so what we'll do on Wednesday is on Wednesday we're going to be actually beginning to jump into making our first app. And what I've done is put together a sample project which just has some of the bare minimum code and files that you'll need to get started, and put it together in a zip file. So next week, actually let me just move back here to the Hangout and stop sharing. So basically on Wednesday this week at, again, 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central, I'll be going through that sample project, and you'll have it there, and I'll show you, like, okay, we're going to modify some pieces of the code and basically make an app that allows you to track different things. For this example, it would be the temperature, and then plots it on a graph, very, very simply. So with that, does anybody have any questions? Okay, so I got one question here. Someone asked about, am I using Bootstrap for the responsive design? So Bootstrap is another library. It's similar to jQuery Mobile, so you would use Bootstrap instead of jQuery Mobile. jQuery Mobile, I found, works faster on the phone, and it has more components, so that's why I've used that instead of Bootstrap. So, but if you chose to, you could use Bootstrap instead of jQuery Mobile. And yes, they do have some built-in types of stuff specific for responsive design. But I find that I personally prefer just kind of having full control over that without having the framework interfering with that. So let me just see. Again, if you have any questions, just go ahead and email them to me. Or I think if you post them on the Hangout, that should work. All right, and what I will do is I think I have all of your emails. If I don't, let me just the thing to do is just go ahead and shoot me an email at sinceallelsefails@gmail.com. And what I'll do then is after every course, I'll send out any files. In this case, I'll send out the deck, and I'll send out the code that we'll be using for Wednesday, as well as the link, because I have to set up separate Google Hangouts, so this link won't work next week. I'm sorry, on Wednesday. So I'll send out a new link for that. And then basically each one will be each session will be like an hour, and I'll try to I don't know how many sessions we'll have yet, just because I want to make sure that I go slow enough during each one that people can keep up, and then we'll work through the front end piece. Vasek, I just got your email about does PhoneGap work if your application uses PHP. So the answer to that is that so PHP, for just to provide some background, PHP basically is a language that you can use that directly talks to the database. And the database, I'll get into that later. But so basically the answer is that you can't use PHP to generate the HTML. What you can do, though, is you can have PHP hosted online, and then you can have your app call that to get data out of the database, and then have your JavaScript change the way your app looks based on that. So one of the courses we'll actually be using PHP to make our APIs to access the database. And hang on, I think I got okay, yes. So so Andy Boo asked, I see your question about how many Wednesdays we'll meet. This will be this again. I'm not sure how many it'll be. I'm guessing between 5 or 10. And Victor also asked, what software do you need to download for this? So one of the really neat things also, and this goes into why it's lower effort to do this hybrid approach, is that the only thing you need is Notepad. So all of you already have Notepad, but one thing that'll make it a little bit easier to develop is something called Notepad++, like plus sign. So if you just Google Notepad++, let me see if I can post this. Oh no, that's okay. That's just the links to this Hangout. But anyway, it's in my original email. There's a link to Notepad++. Basically, what it does, I can actually pull it up here. Okay, I think I've got my screen shared now. So if I was to open up some code in regular Notepad, it would look like, oopsie, I don't even have it on here because I don't do that, but let me see. Okay, Notepad. I did not want to use that for all of them. Okay, so here, this is how my code looks in regular Notepad. Just plain text, like all of your Notepad documents. But now, if I open it up with Notepad++, they do all this nice little highlighting. So, in blue are certain things, and in orange shows things that are text and not commands, and in pink are numbers, and in yellow are valid JavaScript variables. So basically, it sort of helps you code by highlighting things differently. So I recommend that, but really all you need is just Java. Okay, let me just see here if I have some more. Okay, yep. Just run through this. Okay, very good. So again, okay, and I see I got a question from Alan. Okay, great. Yeah, just that Notepad++ worked well. It's just another reason that I like it is just because it's so quick. It loads quickly. It's free. Very lightweight. So basically, the way the programming will look is that you'll be editing the code in the Notepad++, and then you'll simply be running it. You'll just be opening it up then with Chrome or Firefox. And it'll just run just like if you open up a website. And so it's very, very simple to do there. Okay, so then somebody else mentioned my website was written with WordPress. Can this be converted? Probably not, because WordPress is a plugin. WordPress kind of uses special server code that's installed on a server, so I don't know of a way that could be replicated on a phone. Now, one thing that you might be able to do is I imagine that WordPress has probably different themes that will make it look, that'll make it mobile friendly on just a regular website if someone views it on a browser, but I don't believe that you'll be able to convert that to a native app with PhoneGap just because they have code that kind of requires being run online or on a simulation of being online. Any other questions here? All right, let me just check here. I've got to figure out. So there's supposed to be there's a Q&A widget here, but it tells me it's disabled. So I'll try to figure that out by Wednesday. But yeah, if there's nothing else, what I recommend is if you're on Facebook, I have a link to a Facebook event where you can post your questions, and ultimately there's like 60-some people who've responded to this that can help answer your questions, and I'll also help answer them. Or when I send out the next Hangout invite, on the Hangout page itself, they have places where you can post comments, and either I can respond to them or other people can respond to them. So let me just double check. Someone asked, is Notepad to ++ the only thing you have to download for Wednesday? Yes, and I'm also going to send out a zip file to download that will have the code that we'll be using. So yeah, I see people already figured out about posting on the page, and you can see also that if you do that, so this might be the way that we do Q&A. If you post on the actual Hangouts page, and let me just share my screen here. Okay, oops. Okay, so on the actual link that I send out, and I'll send out a new one. Down below here, you'll see that it says "Say Something," and when people post, it'll show up here in a big long stream. So you can even just post your questions there, and then as you can see, like some people were responding to other people, and I can also respond to you there too. So I think that might be how we'll handle questions going forward. All right. So with that, thank you all for getting on, and I will look forward to seeing you all on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, and I'll send out the email for that. See you then.